All right, guys. Welcome to the Flexwork Podcast. Again, I'm your host, Ludwig Arroyo, and today we have a special guest out of Las Vegas. Am I right, Trent?
Yeah, that's right.
Trent Lee, you're a business broker, which is kind of a unique term, and we're obviously going to get into it today. But welcome to the show, man. I appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, glad to be here. Happy to do it.
So, first of all, let's talk about the weather in Vegas. Like, how's it going over
It's great, actually. I got done playing a couple hours of tennis this morning.
there? Nice.
Took the wife and kids to the lake yesterday, last night, and so it's nice.
What's the temperature of that lake water right now nowadays?
You know what? I don't know what the temperature is, but it is warm. It
Yeah,
feels
nice.
good. Yeah, almost too warm.
That's great, man. I'm jealous. One of those places that you hear about that many people are moving to is like the Henderson area right outside of Las Vegas,
Yeah.
and I'm sure it's getting more populated over there. But would love to live there one day. I mean, yeah, the temperature's great. So so Trent, you come to us by way of the business broker community. Can you tell like our audience who doesn't know what a business broker is, what you do exactly?
Yeah, the simple answer is most people know what a real estate agent is.
Yeah.
What a real estate agent does for houses, we do for businesses. But it's a little bit more than that because it's also, again, going with the real estate example, you typically, when you sell a house, you have to hire a real estate appraiser and a realtor. First one tells you how much the house is worth. Actually, the real estate agent uh, lists it, finds you buyer, gets you offers, gets you through the finish line. A business broker, in theory, does both of those items. So we have to value a business, make sure that it's assessed at the right price, make sure that, and we can talk about how valuations work, but make
Yeah.
sure the market multiples are right, bank financing is in line. And then we have to confidentially take it to market, not like real estate where you put a picture and your address and put a sign in the front yard. In business, it's the opposite. We confidentially take that to market and vet the buyers, qualify them, and then same thing, get offers and get them across the finish line.
That sounds inherently like a big challenge, simply because again, you're removing the marketing from right that front facing retail type of marketing exposure. You'd have to take it to known buyers. I'm assuming, so you would have like a list of potential buyers at the ready at all times. Is that how it works?
One of the marketing strategies, yeah, we have a list of buyers segmented by industry, so we know generally what they're interested in. But we also have, there's a number of different websites where you can market. Let's say, for example, you had a plumbing business. We're not going to mention the name or the address or too much details for the business, but we'll mention that it's a profitable Las Vegas plumbing business for sale. So people will know the area, they'll know the industry. They won't necessarily know, is it in Summerlin? Is it in Henderson? Is it, North Las Vegas? But they'll know the general size. And then from there, we vet and qualify them. And at that point, we disclose name, financials, location, let them set up a time to meet the seller. So they have to go through a vetting and qualification process, but initially it's done confidential. We don't want the employees to find out. We don't want competitors to find out. We don't want customers to find out.
Before we get too deep into the business broker world, can we go back in time a little bit, just to kind of give a sense of how you ended up here? Because not I don't know too many people that grow up saying, I want to be a business broker when I grow up, right?
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
rarely do you find people that say I want to be a real estate agent when I grow up. That's just one of those far out things that you wind up doing or learning about as you get older.
Yeah,
Uh,
simple answer. You're right. I didn't necessarily grow up thinking that I wanted to be a business broker, although I did get introduced to it fairly early on. My dad had sold a business. He had a pretty good sized company, depending on the time of the year, between 500 to 600 employees.
right.
And I watched him go through the process of essentially what I didn't know it at the time, but it was a private equity group that came
Mm,
in and bought him. And I watched him go through it, and he took us along that process. At the time, my brother and I were in high school, and so we were a little bit older, but still relatively young. We had real no business being involved in the transaction,
right.
but my dad took us along for the ride, and we saw from the inside how a lot of that worked. Now, fast forward a few years, I had sold a couple of my own businesses that I had started. My last company, I had about 90 employees. I sold it in 2012.
What was that?
And at
What
the
did you do that? What was that company about?
Yeah, do you remember almost everyone's heard of it. Do you remember the old, cheesy commercials where the old lady falls down and says, "Help, I've fallen, I
I
can't
fallen,
get
I
up."
can't get up. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we were the West Coast call center for Life Alert or Life Watch, the
Oh
medical pendant.
wow.
Yeah, and so I sold that in 2012, and like I said, that was the second company. At the time, I thought, "You know what? I've been through the process myself now a number of times. I was introduced to it young, when my father sold, and frankly speaking, I was not impressed with the business brokers that I met, and I thought I could do a better job. And luckily, I had the right background, accounting undergraduate degree, got into Harvard for Masters of Finance,
That's right.
went and got licensed as a business appraiser, which is unique. Most business brokers are not licensed as business appraisers. Then I got licensed as a business broker, and it's been fun. Been a fun ride since then.
So, your college journey is pretty in depth. I mean, like you said, you went to Harvard University. I think you got your MBA at Texas. Is it Texas A&M?
Texas A&M, yeah, yeah.
So, what is that? 6 years of postgraduate, or 4 years of postgraduate work?
Yeah, no, a number of years. I didn't finish. I transferred into the MBA program, so just finished with the MBA.
So, at that point in time, was everything geared towards business and being a business broker at that point, or you were still really
No,
on?
I was just going to school at night, running my businesses by day. I was just going, for my own betterment, my own education. I was continuing to run the business, and so by the time we sold the second company, I had, for I'll get into a little bit more detail here, just because it's a interesting podcast, financial related here.
Yeah,
But I thought I would do like the Tim Ferriss thing, the 4-hour work week.
yeah, yeah.
Sold the second company. At the time, I had another company that was very hands off, and doing quite well. Well, after we sold the second company, we were in a pretty good position where I didn't necessarily need to worry about working every day. And I thought this, 4-hour work week that everyone was talking about was, man, that was the life to have.
Yeah, yeah.
And you know what happened after about a week? I wanted to shoot myself. I was so bored. It was awful.
Right.
The problem with that book is it doesn't mention the fulfillment and the satisfaction
Mm,
from actually being able to get something, have something on your calendar
yeah.
and accomplish the
Accomplishments.
sense of accomplishment and the sense of fulfillment, not just hanging out, sitting by the pool and playing golf all day or
Right.
whatever it is,
Right.
tennis all day. For some people, that's fine, but for me, I didn't get a lot of joy and fulfillment and accomplishment out of just hanging out and doing nothing. Yeah, I wanna hang out with my kids and my wife, and there's a balance there, but I also wanna have some sense of a
Fulfillment.
purpose and
Yeah.
some sense that I'm accomplishing and producing and contributing to the economy, and for me, that wasn't the right approach, and so at that point, that's when I decided I needed to get into the business.
So let's. I'm interested in the Harvard thing because I don't meet too many Harvard, yes, folks that attended Harvard University. What was your experience at Harvard? Harvard's been in the news lately a lot, and so it makes sense for us to just kind of touch on this a little bit, if you can. Just what your experience was getting accepted to Harvard, being that the school has such a big name, and then attending it, and how was your experience there, attending classes and all
Yeah.
that?
It was fantastic. It was a hybrid program, part online, part on campus. I started the online portion. At the time, I still had my business here in Las Vegas, and that's really how I got in. I didn't get in because I have some brilliant test results. I got in because at the time I had a company with a good amount of employees, and
Yeah,
I think they probably let people that aren't as smart as all the other really smart Harvard people get in because of that. And it was great. We had a great experience. It came to the point where we had done some of the online portion of it, and as I mentioned, it was a hybrid program. Came time to move out there, and it really just didn't make sense for us to move. At that point, we had, can't remember, 2 kids, 1 on the way.
mm,
Had a business that was established here, had other civic and church related responsibilities. So it was a matter of, could we uproot? Yeah, but was it worth it? At the time, I wasn't getting a pay raise. I wasn't trying. I was just going at night doing for my own betterment, and so it wasn't like I was going to, magically change careers or
Right.
change jobs or get a pay raise after it was over. And once we dropped the name, like the pride of the name,
Yeah.
it really didn't make
It
sense
didn't
to
make sense.
spend all the time to uproot our family to move out there. We were going to keep our house here in Las Vegas, and so we were looking at fully furnished houses, apartments out in Cambridge, and the living expenses would end up costing more than the degree itself. And I was just paying cash for everything as I went. I didn't want to go into debt for it, and it just didn't make sense. So I ended up transferring into the MBA program at Texas A&M.
Nice. So you were just like, sorry, sorry, Harvard, but not sorry. I'm out of here. Back to Vegas, or actually back to Texas to continue
Yeah,
education.
and here's the reality. From an education standpoint, the education was just as good.
Yeah.
But what isn't what I couldn't partake of that I because I wasn't gonna move out there was the networking. That's the real value, is the networking and the relationships that you develop with the other students. And because I was doing the online portion of it,
You didn't get
we
to
weren't gonna
experience
move
that.
out. I wasn't gonna get that portion of it, and so it really just didn't make sense.
So now you're at the point where you're about to start on your journey. One of the things that has fascinate me too about business owners is that part of being a great business owner is being a great business salesperson, right? Sales is at the foundation of what it takes to grow a business to the levels that you were able to grow your businesses to. Did you ever consider yourself to be a salesperson?
You have to be. To your point, I
Right.
I mean, you're right on. As a business owner, you have to be competent and wear many hats and do it in a way that you are that type of person. You are a salesperson. You are an accounting person. You are a manager. You are, fill in the blank. There's so many different hats that you have to wear and do it well to be a successful business. So would I consider myself a natural salesperson? Yeah, probably not, but if you understand business, whether it comes naturally or not, it better be a skill set that you start to learn and develop.
To that point, you got, I mean, what is it? The IBBA award for the number one sales broker or business broker of the year. How did that come about?
Yeah, it's IBBA is the International Business Broker Association. They're like the governing body for all business brokers, well, internationally, but for the most part, there's only so many, US, Australia, Europe, that type of that type of demographic is really where most of these type of transactions and business brokers are at. And they track who's doing the biggest deals,
Mm,
which I do not win the award for. There are guys in New York and LA who do much bigger deals than I do. But they also track how many deals are actually happening in the market and who's doing the most volume, number
mm,
of transactions. And to your point, yes, I did not just get the award last year for the from the IBBA for the most closed transactions. I got that award the last 7 years in a row. So
that's
there's
awesome.
there's no one in the country who's doing the amount of volume I'm doing. At this point, it's over 600 transactions that I've closed.
Oh my god! So how do you even find time to even sit down with me? I mean, you would think you're the busiest broker in the country. What is what does a schedule like that look like? Is it conference calls? Are you flying all over the country? Are you meeting people in person? What how does this work?
Yeah, that's a great question. No, schedule is really flexible. To your point, I mentioned earlier, got done playing tennis this morning.
Right.
I play tennis 4 times a week, sometimes 5 times a week,
Wow.
every morning. I've got a lot of flexibility there. Most of the meetings are Zoom or in person if they're in Las Vegas, but I do transactions all over the country and meet with people by Zoom. I was using Zoom well before COVID. COVID just accelerated how everyone was accustomed and willing to do business on it. And so, from my standpoint, COVID was fantastic we did not slow down selling businesses, and it got everyone into a mindset of being able to work remotely, which I was doing anyway, closing businesses all over the country. And so, but hour wise, yes, I'm busy, but I'm extremely effective with my time because I leverage technology
Mm,
so much. I use automations, I use AI, I use workflows and have processes, procedures in place where I'm able to, just from an efficiency standpoint, I just do a lot more in my day than other business brokers, not because I'm any better. It's just simply because I use automation and technology. If I find myself having to do something one or two times per week, the same task,
yeah.
it's
You
just
find that automation work.
my personality. It's drives me crazy. I'm like, there's no need to, let alone do it one or two or three times a day. I'm just talking if it's even a week, then I look for ways to automate or outsource it. And so between automation and outsourcing, I spend my time on the very most important things that I need to do. And I use automation, I use AI, I use technology, and I use outsourcing to take care of everything else that is a task that isn't my top priority, my highest paying priority.
Now, when it comes to d- your business, are you independent? Are you your own brokerage, or do you work
You
for?
can be. A lot of people are independent. There's a handful of franchises as well. I work under a franchise at this point. So independently, but under the umbrella or brand of a franchise.
So, do you have a team under you that helps you kind of whether it's pull information together or get leads together or things like that, or is it all on you?
I have one assistant. So
Got it.
just me and my assistant. So at this point, literally, and here's the interesting thing about doing so many volumes, the amount of transactions I do, buyers become sellers and sellers
That's
become
big
buyers. And so I don't do, and I haven't spent a dime on
on marketing.
advertising or getting any type of leads at this point, because what happens is at this point, like I said, 600 transactions. You know what? I'm going to have a handful, and by a handful, I mean 3 to 5% of the deals that I sold years ago that for whatever reason, they're burned out. They don't like the business they bought. They're ready to retire. Maybe they've had it for years. They call me back. And so I resell 20, 30 businesses every year that I've already sold, sometimes multiple times before. In fact, there's one pizza shop, just a small little local business. I've sold it 6 times in the last 10 years.
And you just your business model is you get commission on the sale. Like, so you don't get paid
Percentage of the transaction.
until it's sold, right? And that's part of the
Yep.
selling point, right? Like, hey, you don't have to pay me a dime. It just when we sell this, that's when if we sell
Yeah,
it. But then,
exactly.
what percentage of these transactions don't go through? So out of 100 deals, what percentage
That's a
don't
good
you sell?
that's a good question. Industry standard is really low. Most businesses, honestly, most businesses don't sell.
Mm,
But it is a combination of most owners aren't ready. They haven't spent any time really doing proper exit planning. They just wake up one day and they're burned out, or they wake up one day to an emergency. They're sick. They
mm,
got cancer. Their wife has cancer. Mom on the other end of the country is sick and they need to move to take care of some sort of emergency where all of a sudden they've got to sell their business and they haven't spent any time really planning for it. So a lot of businesses won't sell just because they're, for the most part, they're businesses, but they're built around the owner. The owner is the business. And that's
got
not to say that you can't still sell it. You still can. You're just not going to get as high of a multiple here. But the other aspect is, to be honest, bad business brokers. They misprice the business. They don't have the background to properly appraise the business. And so they go to market because the guy needs $1 million to fund his retirement. Therefore, they're going to try and tell him, oh, well, let's try and sell it for $1 million and then hope that it thing doesn't sell in 6 months. The guy decides, oh well, let's come down on price. That's just bad. I mean, I think that's unethical business brokering. You got to price it right to begin with, and and back it up with data. And so if you have a mispriced business that has very little exit planning that's been done, it's likely not going to sell.
That begs a few questions that I want to get deeper in. One of them being, is there a niche that you specialize in? Because I would imagine from a pizzeria all the way over to landscaper, all the way up to a software company, there's a lot of range there. Do you specialize in certain types of businesses, franchises? Like, is there a specialty?
I don't.
You don't.
No, there are plenty of business brokers that do specialize in certain industries, and there's pros and cons to that. You can really learn the industry, and you know exactly what to look for and
That
how
was
to
my follow up,
analyze.
right? Because I would feel, now that your answer is you don't have a specialty, you have to learn a lot about a lot, right?
Yeah, yeah.
How does that?
But that's what
What's
keeps it interesting. That's why I haven't
ah
got burned out or bored in the
gotcha?
business. One day I'm walking into a steel fabrication
Yeah.
company. Next day I'm walking into, like you say, a landscaping company. Next day, a software company. You get to the point where you learn so much. You have such a broad range of expertise and knowledge that you can have a conversation with. I can, at this point, I can sit on an airplane next to any business owner, doesn't matter if they're a surgeon or anything else, and I know a pretty good amount of how they operate and the metrics and the general questions to ask to have at least a basic conversation.
So if I wanted to sell, this place is called Flexwork Studios. We have a multi-room podcast studio. If I had to sell this, you would have to come in and appraise our lights, appraise our microphones, learn about the quality of what we do here. I'm assuming, right? And our clients and all that good stuff.
Good. It's a good question. Yes and no. It depends on the valuation approach that we're taking.
Mm,
Most of the time, when you were referring to, like, look at the lights and the equipment, what you're referring to is an asset valuation. Most businesses don't want to sell for asset value. The asset value is the lowest valuation. Assuming the assets are being used to produce a profit, what most business owners want to sell for is what's called a going concern valuation. And that's based on how profitable the business is.
mm,
Most businesses sell for a multiple of adjusted earnings. So let's say the podcast studio, I'm just making up some numbers to just illustrate the point. Let's say the podcast studio is doing $1 million gross revenue and $250,000 adjusted earnings. And that adjusted earnings is important. We can talk about that later if we want to. But we make add backs. We do recasting to the financials. We get the adjusted earnings. Let's say it's $250,000. And then I have a database where I can look up other podcast studios based
mm.
on your industry, based on your size. What are they selling for from a market multiple standpoint? If the market multiple for podcast studios or this type of media is 3, just for the sake of easy math, we take the $250,000 of adjusted earnings times 3. That gets us a going concern or a fair market valuation of $750,000. Now we might look at the equipment, and the equipment, it's used, it's not brand new anymore, it's depreciated. That might have a value of, I'm just making something up, $200,000. We don't want to look at a $200,000 valuation when the going concern from an
750.
adjusted cash flow standpoint is much higher.
Mm,
In that case, it's a little bit like selling a used car, right? You can go to the dealership and you can say, how much will you pay me for this car? And if they offer you $30,000, you could also go to sell it for parts. In other words, an equipment value. And the equipment value, selling the car for parts, might be $10,000.
right.
Well,
Right.
you're better off selling it to the dealer at 30,000. But here's the thing. This is where a lot of sellers mix up. You can't go to the dealer and say, okay, I'm willing to accept your offer of $30,000, but I'm going to throw in the tires, and the tires are worth $2,000, and the transmission, we're going to include that, and that's worth $3,000. You're coupling two valuations
Oh,
together, and you can't double dip. You either sell it for asset value, or you sell it for a multiple of earnings approach, a going concern. You can't take
you can't do
both of
both.
them and try and like double dip, because if you think about it this way, the car in and of itself has no value, or at least has declining value, if it
If it
has no
doesn't have
transmission,
yeah, or if it doesn't have wheels.
if it has no tires,
Right.
right? And so you pick one valuation or another. And it's the same thing goes with the business. If a business owner comes to me and says, I'll give you a perfect example. I have a business that sells tires and wheels,
Right.
and they have about, based on their earnings, about $1.2 million in valuation based on how profitable they are. But here's the thing, they have about that, just slightly under that, in inventory, just a warehouse full of tires
1.2
and rims,
billion with a
wheels.
B or
No,
million?
no, no, $1.2 million
Million.
with an M,
Yeah.
$1 million valuation, and they have about $1 million of inventory. Well, the seller can't come to me and say, okay, I'll take the $1 million, the $1.2 million valuation, but someone needs to pay me for the inventory. Because without the inventory, the business doesn't produce the net profit that justifies the
Right.
$1.2 million valuation. So the inventory is included in that. So it's a matter of them being sloppy, having too much inventory on hand, in theory, kills or lowers what they're actually netting out of the business, but it doesn't change the valuation, at least when it comes to a fair market valuation when we're reselling a business.
Like homes, I imagine people get very, very personal and very, what's the word, romantic about their baby, their business. They're gonna sell it,
Yeah.
and this probably means more to the people that started their own business and now are at the point where they have to sell versus the guy that just bought it 3 years ago and now wants to flip it. But I would imagine people get really, really emotional about selling these things, and sometimes you have to come in with the hard truths. Has that happened where you had to come in and give some bad news and it went sideways? Like, the client was not happy with the the route that you were taking or the valuation where you were taking it.
Yes, every day. Honestly, every day. So
What?
here's the thing. It's I've never sold a house, so I don't know what it's like to sell a house, but if I had to guess, it's more emotional than selling a house because a house is
Oh wow.
just the house, right? It's not, they haven't put as much blood, sweat, tears. They haven't built a culture. They haven't developed relationships with the customers, with the employees.
Mm,
They haven't they in one sense, people spend way more time putting effort into their business than their house.
that makes sense.
And so from that standpoint, people are, they treat their house, I mean, if I they treat their business like, I can't come in and call their kid ugly.
Right,
In
of
other
course.
words, I can't tell them their business is worth less than what they think. And so the best way that I found to do that is I'm not coming in with my opinion of what the business is worth. And that's where most business brokers get it wrong, is they're coming in with a general opinion because they're not licensed as business appraisers, they don't have access to the data. I'm coming in with raw data and I'm saying, "Look, here's what your tax returns show. Let's go through it together, make the adjustments. Let's calculate what's called seller's discretionary earnings, and then let me pull up a database and I'll show you, if you have a simple little mailbox shipping, postal center, let's look up what is the fair market multiple, and I'll pull the last 36 transactions in the general area and the general size, and I'll say most of these businesses are selling for 2.2 times the net profit, the adjusted net profit. So if we look at your net profit in this little mailbox store of $100,000 and the market multiple is 2.2, what do you think this business is going to sell for? And at that point, it's just simple math.
Mm.
It's no longer my opinion of saying, "Yeah, I think your business is worth $220,000," and then they get all offended, and they're like, "I spent the last 15 years building this thing, and my customers love me, and it's worth $1 million." Well, sorry, it's not, but we have to approach it from a mathematical, logical standpoint with backing it up with data rather than just an opinion.
And that guy then turns around and says, "You know what? I'm gonna find somebody else." Right? Has that happened?
They could. Yeah, for
And then
sure.
they go to somebody else, and that guy tells them kind of the same thing, or they lie to them, and you know, customer goes with them, and they don't get the valuation. It gets closer to what you were talking about initially, and I,
Yeah, or they get with a bad business broker that doesn't know how to properly value a business, and the business broker is desperate for a listing, and the seller goes to him and says, "Look, I'm not selling this thing for less than $400,000." And the broker says, okay, we'll list it at $400,000 with the intention that they either are so inexperienced or such a bad business broker that they actually think it's going to sell. They
Mm,
don't actually run the numbers, and from a bank service, a debt service standpoint, they don't actually run the numbers and think, even if they did find a buyer dumb enough to offer $400,000 for that, no lender's going to loan on it. So
right.
they just wasted their time. Or they take it at the approach of, okay, I'll take the listing at $400,000, and after this guy comes to reality in 6 months that his business isn't worth $400,000, we're going to drop the price. That could happen too.
I'm sure that when you see that in hindsight, you're probably like, it probably tears you apart that you didn't get to help this customer because it seems like you have integrity, and
I do.
if
Yeah.
and that's obviously a key component to helping people sell their business. Having the integrity to tell them honestly what they think they're worth, and that you can help them get there. So it's got to hurt when you see somebody get take advantage of by other brokers.
Yeah, it is. It is a challenge, and that's why I try to. Again, part of my process of how I'm able to handle so much volume is I really put together a lot of education for my
Mm,
sellers and my buyers through the process, so that they, in fact, be. For example, let's say the same mailbox, this made up example I gave you, this little mailbox center. That's why before I meet with them, I send them a bunch of videos prior to me even going out to meet with them or having a conversation with them, knowing so that they understand how valuations work. Because most sellers have no idea how to value their business. And because no one's teaching them this stuff. Most, even in school, which, let's be honest, most business owners don't go to school, or they went to school so long ago. But even in school, they're not really teaching this concept. And so most sellers just have no idea what their business is worth or even how to guess. And so I'll send them a bunch of educational videos where I'm walking them through the valuation process. I'm helping them put together. I've got a valuation calculator that I custom made that they can have a pretty good idea of what their business is worth just by plugging in some numbers.
mm,
And then when I meet with them, I'm just backing up the data and reinforcing the education that I provided to them to begin with. So they're not caught off guard that their business isn't really worth $400,000. It's going to be closer to $220,000.
right. I would imagine that part of your like when you deal with competition, it's not necessarily other brokers. It's probably more that business owners think they're better off selling it on their own.
Yeah, you're right. There are a number of business owners that just don't even know business brokers exist or what they do or what the value is. And that becomes a big challenge because, as I mentioned earlier in this uh, interview, how important confidentiality is. Well, when the business owner starts trying to sell the business on their own, and they are now taking a bunch of phone calls from people that are tire kickers, they not only breach confidentiality,
Mm,
they're taking those phone calls in front of employees, in front of customers. Not only does word start to get out, but now they spend so much time because they don't have systems in place. They don't have automation in place that I have. They're spending so much time having calls with people that are tire kickers, wasting their time, that they now take their eye off of running the business as profitable as they can. And the worst thing they can do prior to selling is start getting distracted or lose focus and
mm,
start having revenue and profitability
slip.
declining.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes
Yeah.
sense. I would imagine customers, if they catch wind that that this yoga studio is going out of business, or that they're looking to sell, then customers might already look to find other yoga studios, etc.
Yeah, and it's worse with the employees. That's a real problem. So
Oh
I'll give
yeah.
you an example. Most employees are here's the problem. Hollywood has trained everyone who's an employee, not a business owner, to think that as soon as the business is being sold, think about what happens in the movies. New buyer comes in, business is being sold, and they fire all the employees or they
Yeah.
cut the staff.
Yeah.
And the reality is just the opposite. The employees for the new buyer are more important than ever because the new buyer
wants
We're
to keep
talking
things
small
going.
business, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, we're not talking about majorly, $10 billion acquisitions where there's where there's synergies and people are coming in and replacing departments. We're talking about main street businesses, main businesses under $5 million.
yeah,
Those employees are more important than ever at the transaction. But employees don't realize that. They think as soon as they hear the business is being sold, they're all going to get fired.
right.
And they start looking for jobs. They start getting nervous. And it's not the reality, but that's the perception because they've all seen the movies, and that's what happens in the movies.
I have a buddy who I went to college with who recently got into the franchisee business, and I believe he does pretty much what you do, but on just with franchisee businesses like
Yeah,
Rumble
there's business
Boxing.
brokers that
Or
just do franchises.
do you deal with franchises as well, or non-franchisee?
Franchise resales. Yeah, franchise resales, not new franchises.
So if I had a Rumble Boxing franchise in
Yep,
Nevada, and I just bought it, 2 years later I want to sell it, you get involved with
perfect.
that.
Yep,
Yeah.
that's exactly what we do. And I do that for franchises all over the country.
Is there a reason why you don't do more of that, or not just reselling?
Like new franchise,
Yeah.
it's a lot harder to sell a new because at that point you're selling a dream. You're
Mm,
selling someone in a startup dream. Um, I specialize in selling existing. I'm looking historical. I'm looking backwards on historical performance. New franchise resellers, brokers, they have to sell the future. They got to sell that this buyer can come in and build this into something. My just my niche where I've found my specialty is I'm looking backwards, historical. I'm selling businesses on performance rather than a new franchise. And not only that, it probably pays a lot better to sell what we're doing right now. For example, on Friday, I've got a transaction that we're closing, actually, two of them on Friday. One is a wedding chapel in
okay.
Las Vegas, and that's being sold for $1.2 million. One of them is a auto repair mechanic shop,
Oh
and
wow.
that's being sold for 875,000, if I recall. I take a
Wow.
percentage of those transactions. Those are going to pay a lot more than selling a brand new, Fantastic Sam's haircut salon
Right.
franchise.
Um, your license, is it just Nevada, or is it nationwide?
Yeah, it's a good question. Nevada requires a business broker permit. There are a handful of other states that require real estate licenses, but most states do not require a business broker to have a license.
Oh,
That's why you get so many of these. I hate to keep using the phrase bad business brokers, but you get business brokers who just decide to call themselves a business broker, and there's no licensing that regulates that. So they can be a business broker if they want to call themselves a business broker, even though they have no background, they have no frankly, business being in the
yeah.
business,
Right.
but yeah,
But so
that's the
you're allowed
challenge.
to sell in those states as well, then, and then obviously if there's a state that requires a license, you would have to get the license in that state.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, so would you say a large majority of your sales come in the state of Nevada and Vegas?
Probably, I haven't checked it, 50, 60%. The rest
Okay.
are all over the country.
Wow. And it sounds like you deal a lot in Main Street businesses,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Um, now when it comes to the valuation on there, your background is in finance. So do you actually go in there and look at the numbers and break everything down, or were you
I do.
getting, yeah?
Mhm.
So how
Yep.
fun is that?
I love it, because I always, as a kid, I would always drive around these big, huge, nice houses, and I'm like, "What does that person do? How do they pay for this?
I
How do
do
they
it now.
afford this?"
Yeah.
Well, that's the fun part about being a business broker is I can walk into all of these businesses and I see under the hood. I see what's really going on.
Mm,
Are they really making money? Are they just barely scraping by? Do they look like they're, perceived making money and they're really not? Or the opposite approach. I see a lot of businesses that on the surface don't look like they're all that special. And the owner's not driving a Lamborghini, he's just driving a pickup truck. And I look under the hood and they're netting $1 million
Mm,
every year in, year out for 30 years. They put $1 million in their account.
that's crazy.
And it's interesting to see.
That is fascinating. Do you find that when you walk, like, do you find yourself going into shops offering to buy their business or sell their business? Are you on a referral, like on a referral basis at this point with
Just referral at this point.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So what ends up happening is, again, based on the amount of transactions I've done, I'll excuse me, I'll sell a business and they'll refer me to, well, here, I'll give you a perfect example. A shopping center not that far from where I live. I sold this little ice cream shop years ago. They referred me to the doggy daycare, which we sold a couple months ago. I'm sorry, a couple months after we sold the ice cream shop,
Right.
and that was $1 million transaction. Ice cream shop was a little one. They then referred me to the restaurant next door. I sold that. They then referred me to the pizzeria next door, and so you look at this little shopping
And
center,
you
and
sold
I've
half
sold
of it.
every single
All of it.
every single business in there. But
That
this happens all the time, especially, and this is how I get, how do you end up going from Las Vegas to listing businesses all over the country? It's because I'll sell a business here and they'll refer me to their brother-in-law who owns a business in Colorado. And then I sold, in fact, just recently a steakhouse in Colorado
oh wow.
from a referral from someone here in Las Vegas. And that buyer who bought the steakhouse has now bought a second business from me. So at this point, it's just referral.
That's amazing, man. Is there, I mean, I'm sure you're driving down the street with your family and you go to a restaurant, you're walking into places and you're eating at places that you've bought and sold, right? If
Yeah.
they're in the immediate area. Um, is the goal to continue doing this, uh, let's call them street business style? I don't know if there's a professional term for it. Or is the goal eventually to get to New York City style, like big business sales?
Yeah, it's a really great question because that's the goal of most business brokers is they start small, get some experience, and then try and get to bigger transactions, and then they just do whatever it is, three, four, five, six bigger transactions per year. I'm taking the exact opposite approach, where
Mm,
yes, I want to do bigger transactions, and I get referred to those bigger transactions. The challenge is those I don't wanna build, again, you can probably tell from my personality, I don't wanna do 5 or 6 deals a year and then sit around and do nothing,
yeah, yeah,
for the rest of the year.
yeah.
And then 2, I don't wanna be dependent on 2 or 3 of those deals blowing up, and all of a sudden my year
Gotcha.
is jeopardized and shot. And not only that, here's what I really have found, is there are there is more of a need than ever in the smaller Main Street education of buyers and sellers and getting them sold or transactions done, whether you're helping a buyer buy a business or a seller sell the business. There's such a lack of education and there's such a lack of resources, really good professional resources, that if you do a good job in the Main Street space, that's why I get so many referrals,
Yeah.
is because they see I'm taking like the higher level kind of bigger deal market, the professional sims, the pitch decks, the automations, the processes, the procedures, and I'm applying it downstream. And the market is so big and so untapped on the Main Street market where there are all sorts of guys, Harvard, Columbia, Purdue, that play in the big space. That's a lot more competitive
Mm.
than the Main Street businesses. And so I'm just taking the professionality of the bigger deals and applying it to the lower Main Street market. And it's at this point working so well, I have no intention of changing it.
Is there a world where you take, and maybe you're already doing this, where you uh, take this opportunity to teach others and go on like a speaking circuit and kind of let other people learn everything you've learned in this space?
Probably not speaking because I don't wanna have to I like working from home, I like doing everything remote, I like the quality of life at this point
Yeah, huge.
is fantastic.
Two young
I
kids,
don't
right?
really. What's that?
Two young kids at home.
No, that was a while ago. Now at this point, I've got 2 in college
Oh,
and 2
wow.
in high school. Yeah, yeah,
Wow, okay.
yeah. So, yeah, but to your point, no, I probably won't go around speaking, because I don't wanna have to deal with the travel, but I am putting together a video training course that's totally free. I'm not gonna sell it. It's just purely education for buyers to go through with the intention that they'll reach out to me and I'll help them through the transaction.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to charge anything for the video course. At this point, it's almost over 30 hours of video very tactical, like exactly what to do step by step through the whole process.
And you've recorded this already?
In the process of it,
Oh,
it's
wow.
about halfway done.
Awesome. I mean, I think that'll be a great value for tons and tons of people. Um, Trent, what's next for you?
I keep doing the same thing. I'm enjoying it. I haven't gotten bored with it, and so, um, like I mentioned, the quality of life. I found a good balance between doing a lot of deals, but having a good quality of life. And at this point, it sounds uninspiring and unmotivational,
No,
but
that it
I'm
actually
I'm
sounds the
quite
opposite. It
content.
sounds fun. It
Yeah,
sounds a lot of
quite
fun.
yeah,
Uh,
quite content with exactly where I'm at.
do you have the ability to sell here in New Jersey?
Yeah, yeah. I have actually a business for sale in New Jersey right now that does bridal gowns, dresses, formals, all of that type of stuff.
Oh, yeah. Where is it located?
I
Or is
have to
that
look up
confidential?
the name. Is there a Hacken? Is it Hackensaw? Hacken?
There's a
There's
Hackensack. There's a
Hackensack.
Hackensack,
Yeah,
and there's a
yeah,
Hackettstown.
yeah. So,
Hackensack.
yeah, I'd have to look up the exact
Okay.
city, but that's it.
Well, that's not both. Both of those are not too far from us here, so that's kind of cool. That's good to know
Yeah,
because we obviously deal with a lot of businesses, and if ever we run into any businesses that are looking for either a buyer or to sell, I know a guy now, so
yeah,
that's great.
absolutely. Love to connect.
Is anything you want to share in terms of like where people can find you if they want to get access to these videos you're putting together?
Yeah, so whatever their favorite social media, channel is, I'm on all of them, and here's the interesting, I post usually most of my new listings, I post about 7 days to my social media followers before we go public
Oh,
with new listings. So if they're buyers, they can get access to pre-public deals by following me on social media. If I haven't quite finished and released that course, but if they send me a message on any of the social media channels or an email, I'd be happy to put them on the list to once it's out, let them know.
I that just reminded me of a question I did have before we go here. Do you find that people who buy businesses are oh do you find that they are always in the same industry or they know of the same industry that they're buying in? For instance, the guy that's buying a pizzeria, he's familiar with restaurants, or do you find that there's more often than not people are buying businesses that they have no idea about in terms of the
Yeah,
industry?
it's actually a really good question, and it's one of the things I post a lot about on social media. I post a lot of content, general content, education, and I'm always preaching buy within your circle of competence.
Mm,
In other words, if you have no experience whatsoever in restaurants and managing restaurants and running restaurants, just because you see, some online guru promoting buy a business, don't buy something that's outside of your circle of competence, or unless it's a circle of competence that you can learn. Like there's some ancillary experience there.
yeah,
But it's hard enough to run a restaurant, to then run it without having any experience. That's to me, that's a high risk proposal. And the whole point of buying businesses is to get away from the risky startup and to buy something that's established
established.
and profitable and low risk. And the way to keep it low risk is to buy a business that you have somewhat relevant experience in operating and running it.
Gotcha. That's a great piece of advice, and I appreciate you sharing that with us. So is it at Trent Lee on all socials?
But most of them, yeah, at Trent Lee or Trent Biz Broker, they
Trent
can
Biz-
just do a search for any of them, Trent Lee, and it'll pop up.
Awesome, man. Listen, I really appreciate
Yeah,
you taking the time to share this knowledge on what it is to be a business broker, man. You're doing it at the highest level, and I think our audiences could learn a lot. And I've certainly learned a lot today, man. So I appreciate you taking the time.
yeah, it's been great. Thanks for having me.
No problem, man. All right, everyone. Thanks for checking in on us at Flexwork. on the Flexwork Podcast. We'll see you soon.